let's look at some of the implications for Kantianism. One of the implications of Kantianism is that the consequences of our actions don't have moral significance when we're confronting dilemmas. In other words, Kant doesn't care what happens as a result of what we do. Kant's much more concerned about what we do and why we do it. And we'll talk more about Kant's ideas about intentions and motivations in a later lecture. But with regard to our actions, what Kant is concerned with is, are the actions that you're taking logically consistent, rational actions, or do they have some sort of logical inconsistency in them when you universalize them and apply them to everyone in all situations? Kant's also not concerned about the particulars of the situation that we find ourselves in. Okay, Kant cares about the situation insofar as it identifies what the nature of the moral dilemma is that we're facing. Is this a situation where you're contending with whether or not to keep a promise or break a promise? Is this a situation where you're contending with either telling a lie or telling the truth? So Kant cares about the situation to that regard, but Kant doesn't care about the particulars of the situation, because Kant doesn't believe there are any particulars of a situation that would justify breaking a categorical imperative. In other words, if we have determined that telling the truth and avoiding lying are categorical imperatives, that is, these are rules that apply categorically, then there are no exceptions to the rule. There is no situation in which telling a lie would be a rational act, because every time we try to rationalize lying, we see that we run into these significant logical problems. So Kant's not going to care about the particulars of the situation. This is what makes Kantianism a non-consequentialist and absolutist theory. Non-consequentialist because the consequences of our actions don't have moral significance, and absolutist because there are no exceptions to categorical imperatives. Now, as you might imagine, this got some pushback when Kant rolls his ethical theory out, right? So his critics come forward and they say, all right, Mr. Kant, you're saying that telling the truth is always required of us. That is a categorical imperative, that lying is never morally permissible. And Kant says, yes, that is exactly what I'm saying. Okay, Mr. Kant, well, what about this situation? You're sitting at home on a sunny Saturday afternoon, and there's a pounding at your front door, and you go to your front door, and here's your best friend, and they're out of breath, and they're sweating, and they're clearly terrified. And they say to you, oh my gosh, there's this crazed axe murderer that's chasing me, trying to kill me. You've got to hide me. Let me come into your house. And so you open the door really quickly. Your friend runs in the house, runs to the back of the house, and you shut the door. But there's another knock at the door, and guess who it is? It's the friendly axe murderer, who is also sweating and clearly enraged, and says, have you seen your friend? Do you know where your friend is? Is your friend in your house? You're saying, Mr. Kant, that in this case, it would be morally obligated for me to tell this crazed axe murderer the truth and potentially get my friend killed? You're saying that telling this lie in order to protect my friend's life is actually morally impermissible? And Kant says, yeah, that's what I'm saying. And here's why, Kant says. Kant says, you don't know anytime what the consequences of your actions are going to be. You can take a guess at what the consequences are going to be, but you can't know for certain what the consequences of your actions can be. And you can know even with less certainty how others are going to react to your actions. You don't know how somebody's going to react to what you do or what you say. The only thing you can really know, Kant says, is that lying is an action that can't be universalized without destroying the situation that the rule about truth-telling is supposed to navigate us through. Okay? So what Kant says is the only thing you can be responsible for is the thing you do and why you do it. And so therefore, Kant says, you might not be obligated to tell the axe murderer the specific location of your friend, but you're not allowed also to tell a lie. You can't say, for example, oh, I just saw my friend running down the street that way. Because, Kant says, for all you know, when you let your friend in the door, your friend didn't go and hide in a bedroom or a closet. Your friend went out the back door and is now running down the street. And if you choose to tell this lie, oh no, I didn't let my friend in the house, I just saw him running down the street, you may have just inadvertently steered this crazed axe murderer right into the path of your friend. So you can't predict consequences of your actions or the actions of others with the kind of certainty that you can identify in particular kinds of actions that we would call categorical imperatives. So Kantianism, the foundation, that value that Kantianism rests on, is this idea that human dignity is what matters most. We're trying as individuals to preserve our dignity. And for Kant, that really requires respect for two things. One is, we got to let people be free to exercise their free will. They do not operate on instinct, and people can't be forced to do what we think is the right thing. They have to be free to make these kinds of decisions themselves. And they have to do so with respect to this unique capacity for rationality that they possess. Okay? And so this raises some questions for us that you would want to think about. One is this: is it true that freedom is necessary for human dignity? Is it undignified to force somebody to do something? Is it undignified to prevent somebody from exercising their free will? Second question: does emotion diminish rationality? Okay, so when I'm experiencing anger or excitement or desire or rage or whatever, does that emotion in any way compromise or inhibit my ability to think rationally, logically? And then finally, is rationality necessary for human dignity? Okay, we know that it's not sufficient for human dignity. A person who is only rational and never emotional wouldn't be very good at being a human. And again, the reverse is probably also true, right? Somebody that was always emotional and never rational would be a very difficult person to contend with. They wouldn't seem to be a very dignified person. So, but the question here is this: is not is rationality sufficient? Is it necessary? Do I have to respect my capacity for rationality when making decisions in order to be a dignified human being?